Hello students, today we are covering lesson 10.4 on compound events. Please follow along in your textbook on page 422. Our vocabulary is sample space, and I would like you to copy this down. Sample space is the set of all possible outcomes of one or more events. So we'll be exploring sample space today in the lesson. So to find a sample space, it says you randomly choose a crust and a style of pizza. Find the sample space. How many different pizzas are possible? So we have two types of crust. We have thin crust or stuffed crust. So I'm going to use T for thin crust, and then I'm going to use S for stuffed. Now there's 4 different ways we can have our pizza made for this style. We could have Hawaiian pizza, which I'll call H. We'll have Mexican pizza, pepperoni pizza, or veggie. And we can also have the same type of combination for stuffed crust. So we have Hawaiian, Mexican, pepperoni, or veggie pizza. So we can do thin Hawaiian, thin Mexican, thin pepperoni, or thin veggie. Same thing, we could have stuffed crust with Hawaiian, stuffed crust with Mexican, stuffed pepperoni, or stuffed veggie. So for the outcome, we could have thin Hawaiian, which is 1, thin Mexican, which is 2, thin pepperoni, which is 3, and thin veggie, which is 4. And same thing here. Stuffed Hawaiian, stuffed Mexican, stuffed pepperoni, or stuffed veggie. So when you count all the possibilities, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total outcomes. So there are 8 different possible pizzas that can be made from 2 types of crust and 4 different styles. Right now, try on your own number 1, page 422. Okay, the key idea is called the fundamental counting principle. I need you to copy this down. An event, which we'll call capital M, has lowercase m possibility or possible outcomes. An event N has n possible outcomes. The total number of outcomes of an event M followed by N is you just multiply the number of possible outcomes for M times the number of possible outcomes for N. Go ahead and copy this down and it will make more sense in just a moment. Example 2 is finding the total number of possible outcomes. Find the total number of possible outcomes of rolling a number cube and flipping a coin. So it says use a table to find the sample space. Let H stand for heads and T represent tails. So here we have the 6 different numbers that can be rolled on a cube. And here we have a picture of heads and a picture of tails. We're going to create a table. I'd like you to draw this table out and we'll look at all the possibilities. You can roll a 1 and land on heads. You can roll a 2, land on heads, 3 heads, all the way up to 6. Or you could roll a 1 and land on tails, a 2 and land on tails, a 3 you could land on tails, 4, 5, and then also 6. So when you analyze the chart, you can see that there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way times 2, which equals 12 possible outcomes from rolling a number cube and flipping a coin. So if you notice, event number 1 has 6 possibilities and event number 2 has 2 possibilities. So now we can look at the fundamental counting principle. This is our next method. Instead of listing all the possibilities in a chart, you can actually just look at the number of outcomes for the first event times the number of outcomes for the second event, and it will equal the total outcomes of 12. Example 3, finding the total possible outcomes. So it says, how many different outfits can you make from the t-shirts, jeans, and shoes in the closet? So we're going to use the fundamental counting principle, which says you can multiply the number of outcomes for each event. So in the t-shirts, if you count how many t-shirts there are, it looks like there are a total of 7 possible outcomes. So 7 t-shirts are available. The next thing we're going to look at are the jeans. And the jeans, I see 4 possible outcomes for the jeans here. And then the last combination are shoes. And when I count how many possible outcomes there are 3 different pairs of shoes. So the fundamental counting principle says to multiply each of the outcomes together. So we're going to multiply 7 times 4 times 3. I know 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 7 equals 84 different possible outcomes. So that means you can make 84 different outfits from just 7 shirts, 4 jeans, and 3 pairs of shoes. So you would have enough clothes to go almost 3 months worth without repeating the same exact outfit. Now I'd like you to try on your own numbers 2 and 3. Pause the video to work these out. Our next vocabulary that I would like you to copy down is a compound event. And a compound event consists of 2 or more events. Just like a single event, the probability of a compound event is the favorable outcomes divided by the total possible outcomes. This is a ratio. So go ahead and copy this down and also include this fraction in your work. Example 4. So we're going to look back at example 2, and this is what is the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 and flipping tails. So if we look back at example 2, a number greater than 4 would be 5 and 6, and we also want to roll tails. So that's this one here and this one here. So when we go back, we look at the favorable outcomes. So there's only 2 favorable outcomes. And the total possible outcomes were 12. So 2 out of 12 is a 1 out of 6 possibility. So there's a 1 in 6 chance. If you want to turn this into a percentage, it's 16.6 repeating, or 16 2/3%. Our last example is example 5, finding the probability of a compound event. You flip 3 nickels. What is the probability of flipping 2 heads and 1 tails? So what we've done here is I've actually just taken this chart straight from your textbook, but I would like you to copy it down. In the first nickel, you can get heads or tails. In the second nickel, you can get heads, heads, or heads, tails. Tails, heads, or tails, tails. With the third nickel, heads, 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 tails, heads, tails, heads, heads, tails, tails. And we're listing them, all the outcomes here. Then you can also get tails, head, head, tails, head, tails, 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 head, or tails, tails, tails. And so it's saying flipping 2 heads and 1 tails would be the ones that are circled. So there are only 3 possible ways to get 2 heads and 1 tails. Now try on your own numbers 4 through 7. At this time, I'd like you to complete the RAP journal numbers 1 through 6. If you've already worked out these 6 problems, go ahead and enter your answers into the Edpuzzle video. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.